Welcome to HIListically Speaking. I'm Hilary Russo, certified holistic health coach and health and wellness journalist. This is an empowering place to explore self-awareness, self-love, and transformation through health, healing, and humor. By sharing life-changing experiences, knowledge, and guests with varied expertise, we'll explore who we are, how we got that way, and what it takes to be a happy and healthy grown-up. Mind, body, and spirit. I'm glad you're here. Okay, my friends, if there is one thing that pairs nicely with a good glass of wine, it is great friends. And every empty bottle is filled with great stories. So we are pouring up some good stuff on this episode of HIListically Speaking. And there's no better time to connect, create, and have the conversation, especially with my incredibly talented guest who has a smile to match her infectious personality. Carole Mac. She is a food journalist, she is an author, she's an executive producer, and she's a host. Her show features the world's top sommeliers, winemakers, and chefs, and her latest series, Somm School Insider, follows her journey inside the Sommelier Society of America. Talk about a fun travel show, Carole. Girl, you are on fire.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I can't even stand it.
You know, you and I met probably about 10 years ago. And that is the one thing I love about just meeting new people is that you find your tribe. You really find your tribe. And you and I met during a hosting workshop
I
in
know.
New York City, right?
Yeah, it's so crazy.
We'll give a shout out to Patricia Stark. She's awesome. And I had already been in the television industry probably for about 15 years and was a news anchor and did the whole TV host thing. But, it's about connecting. It's about making new connections and relationships. So I thought, hey, you know what? This will be good. I'll meet new people. And you were one of those people. And there's a few others. But you were one of those people. I'm like, I love this chick. And and from the moment that you were up there sharing your show that you were creating, I was like, oh, I need this person in my life.
I love it. And remember we went and got food after. I'm like, I need to sit next to her. We are friends forever.
Yeah. But look, it's like you've come so far, and what an incredible story that you have to share. So that's one of the reasons why I love doing this podcast is it's giving people, it's holding the space for people to share their stories, the tragedy to triumph, the trauma to triumph. And you've turned such tragedy and trauma into triumph, especially with what you're doing right now.
Oh,
So you've got this amazing show that's launched, Somm School Insider, and tell us about it. I mean, who doesn't love wine? Come on.
I love wine, right? And I started out with a show called Follow That Somm, and it followed sommeliers around New York City, and I just was so in love with their taste mastery, which was just something that was so exciting to me. And I was always, very into food, a food journalist. And then I transferred into the wine world after I really saw these sommeliers, and they could take a glass of wine, smell it, and rattle off 20 things that they smelled and taste. And I was in awe. And I thought, I've got to figure this out. I have to learn and master this taste thing even more. So I decided to go to Somm School at the Sommelier Society of America. And I really wanted to make wine fun and accessible because I'm like the link between food and wine, right? I'm just a wine lover. And so I decided, well, let me go to school and learn how to become a somm, but then just remain a food and wine lover. So I'm sort of like translate everything between the somms, the very, very master somms and people that do this for a living, and just people that love food. And that's what this series is. It's basically following my real instructors on my real journey through Somm School in real time, but we break everything down and make it fun and accessible with wine games and blindfolds and blind tasting and stuff so that it's just easy.
Yeah, it's not your everyday kind of show. And quite frankly, I mean, this is the perfect time for something like this because I was reading just the other day that the sale of wine has just escalated because people have not been going out as much. And, we were just going through this pandemic where restaurants aren't serving. So people are investing more in wine and sharing it at home.
Yeah.
which is a good thing if we're drinking responsibly, right?
Exactly.
So this program is really giving people an inside look not only on the best of the vine, but also having fun with it.
Thank you so much. And that's its goal, is to really bring wine into something that's manageable and accessible. So that, and one thing I learned is that the more you learn about wine is the more you love it. So it's like increased my love of wine so much to understand how to taste it. So this is really simple, easy tips to learn how to understand tasting wine. And then you love it 10 times more. And that's the goal.
Well, here's a question for you, and I'm sure you've heard this before, that not always the most expensive wine means it's the best wine.
That's right.
People will
100%.
sometimes buy a $6 bottle of wine and it just it, it hits their taste buds just the right way. Of course, we're all different, so our taste buds are different as well. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Agreed. And I think the whole thing is, what do you like? And one thing about learning how to taste wine and where you feel it on your, mouth, inside your mouth and things, it helps you identify what you actually like about wine versus just knowing, oh, I like that one and I know I like that one, but I can't understand why. Why do I like one versus the other? And this series gives you sort of the tools to understand what you like about the different wines so that you can make better and more informed choices. So that, okay, I love this $6 wine, but why?
Mm.
And then you learn how to taste it. You're like, oh, it actually has a little more tannin. I like the full body. Oh, great. Then I can find more of different labels for that price. And so it's really not at all about price. It's about learning how to taste and understanding what you like about
And it's really, if that's not a metaphor for life, like what
it.
is your taste? What is your taste for life?
Yeah.
How do you want to open your taste buds and your mind to life in general? What are you willing to accept?
Ooh, I love that. I love that.
You can use it. You can use that. Permission granted.
Love it.
Right? So in that, with the taste of life, I mean, you yourself have been through some battles and some traumas and some loss, and I want to touch on that too, and we'll come back to the wine as well. But when I first met you, you were doing what was the program that you had was or the it was Chop Sizzle Pop.
Yep.
I
That was
remember
my
that, and
pop.
I think that's actually what you brought up in the hosting room, and that's what and I was like, "Look at that smile. Oh my god, she's like all smile. You're just connected. You are. You've got the biggest smile of anyone I know." And which is amazing because it's just who you are, the smile matches the personality like I said. But with the Chop Sizzle Pop, that even came out of something. And then you even have this really beautiful story to share, and I was really moved by it. And that goes back to the loss of your son TJ. Can we touch on the gift of the ladybug a little bit?
Sure, sure. So 11 years ago, I lost my son TJ at 14 months to a mitochondrial condition called Lee syndrome, which was
Mm.
terminal, no cure, no treatment. And, ugh, I mean, the day that I got that news, before that, we had gone to Children's Hospital and been there, say, 2 months of getting all these tests. And then we went to Cleveland Clinic. It took us a long time to get in to a specialist. And within 20 minutes, he looks at my son and says, he's not going to see his second birthday. And I thought, well, at this point in my life, I'm thinking, okay, I guess I can deal with, like, my son might be blind. He might be having, I don't know, seizures, maybe in a wheelchair. I can deal with that. Okay, maybe he'll only live till 40. Okay, maybe 14. And then at that point, it was like, oh, you mean now? Like now.
Mm.
Holy shit. How can I possibly do this? How can I live through this? And I can remember being in the passenger seat of, our car going home. It's like dark and rainy, December, freezing. And I'm like a shell of a human. And I'm so terrified. I'm so terrified that I have no idea how I'm going to survive this. Like, how can I possibly live through my son dying? And I couldn't figure it out. And I was so distraught. And then I had this beautiful, like, very God delivered, very divine inspiration. It just dropped into my head. And so my parents came, and my husband at the time, Troy's parents came, and we were all like in this stark white room, and everyone was standing around TJ, my son. And in this flash on the way home from the hospital, those everybody was horses. It's so strange. You know how in a dream you're like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, horses are people
Mm-hmm.
for sure. It was kind of like that. And these horses were my parents, and I was a horse, like a horse standing on 2 feet. So strange. And then I look down and I have TJ in my arms, and he's a ladybug. And it was so strange in this flash in my head when I asked, like, how can I live with this news? And how can I live through this? I got this flash and I looked down at TJ and he looks up at me and he's a ladybug and he says, Mom, I am a ladybug. You guys are all horses. I am a ladybug and I don't know how to be a horse. And I'm happy and I'm okay. And it was this paradigm shift. And I was like, wait, what? And I'm like, Troy, this is how we're going to get through. This is how we can do it. And he's like, oh, that's nice that you read that book. I'm like, no. No, I just got that right now. Like, this is divine intervention. We are changing our entire paradigm. We're looking at TJ as he's his own perfect being. And he's different than us. We're not going to try to have him live to the number of years that we are. We're not going to have, he ate different food. He couldn't really eat. He was, fed through his stomach. And he's never going to walk. And he's perfect exactly as he is. And this flash was like, oh, okay, so if I see him as his own perfect self, but different from ours, so that we don't have the same expectations. So it was like the metaphor of horse and ladybug. I can do it. And so TJ became our ladybug, and I got home literally it was like December 14th. And by December 17th, I wrote this book, a children's book for TJ with this story. And it was so interesting because I looked it up. Horses live 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
Ladybugs live 1 year. It just happened. I'm like, It was so interesting. And I read it to him for Christmas. I got it bound, and I read it to him for Christmas. And I was able to read it to him over and over. And then my whole entire family and all of our friends all like embraced this paradigm shift and this way of living, which is he is perfect as he is. We are each and everyone is kind of we're own ladybugs. We're perfect as we are, and we can then get through whatever life throws at us and not expect us to be any other way than we actually are. So 2 years after TJ died, I was like, I have to publish this because it saved my life. Like this paradigm saved my life. And it's actually what TJ sort of spoke to us in his eyes. He was like, I'm okay. And all of that's encapsulated in the book. And I was like, I hope this could help someone else. And so on his birthday, 2 years after he passed away, we published it and we gave it to, and it raises money. All of the proceeds raise money for children with life threatening illness. And a lot of people have told me it saved their lives too.
What an amazing story. I knew part of that, but I'm not sure I really truly understood the background. So thank you for sharing that, because if it does give hope, and it can help other parents who are out there that are battling something similar, or just in general, seeing somebody as they are, I think that's the real takeaway here.
Yeah,
And not and we set ourselves up for expectations so much with so many areas of our lives.
yeah,
What an amazing way to look at things differently, because we are each different in our own way,
right.
right?
That's right.
So I find it just a gift, a true gift.
Yes.
I
He's
guess TJ is still teaching us lessons, huh?
he teaches me lessons every day of my life. Yeah, and he sure is.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that loss actually was wasn't too long after you and I met, and you already had this dynamic sense about you. I mean, obviously there is a spirit about you that is about thriving and creating, and even in the worst case scenario, and you've been able to turn it around. So the gift of the ladybug is your book, that magical story of acceptance, and the beautiful story of how we set ourselves up for expectations, and how sometimes through tragedy we really find the other side. And that opened you up towards so many other things, because since then, in the last decade, you have the wineforfood.com, which is where you've been kind of just really thriving, and it seems as though food and wine has really been your your medicine in a
That's
way.
right. Oh my gosh, it really was. I mean, after he died, it's funny. My husband and I at the time were saying, okay, right? this happened, and so it's really hard to get out of the bed in the morning. So everything's off the table. I don't care. We did at this point. We don't care about money. We don't care about careers. We don't care about anything. We want to be able to live again. How do we do that? Wipe everything off the table and think of the thing that is the most exciting you could possibly think of, and create that, and then you can start to get out of bed in the morning. And so that's what we did. I said, I want to get back to food. I want a food show. I want to be on television. I want to write about food, food for me. Because that's joy, it's passion, and it's not family, child oriented that reminds me of the pain, right? So it's something that's totally separate from my pain. And it's something that brings me in the present moment every single time I eat something or think about something. It's a sensory experience that involves my nose and my taste buds and my whole body. And then it's how it feels in my body. And I have a sensory experience that's beautiful and positive and joyful that doesn't involve my pain. So what we decided to do was the coolest thing we could ever think of is go to northern Italy for 3 months and eat our way through northern Italy. Like make cheese, make wine, like work at a gourmet B&B, run pasta classes. And so we did it for 3 months and started the blog that you referred to, Chops as a Pop. And I shot my first food series there called Quest for the Best. And he wanted to do photography. We were both in real estate before. It was like, I was in food before, went into real estate for a bit, realized food's my life forever. And so we used food as a way to pull us out, and food experiences. And so the coolest part about this was a year after TJ died was that it worked. And so I realized, okay, take your passion, whatever your passion is, and package it into an experience that blows your mind. It's so great. And then do that in your life, because then you have something to look forward to that doesn't involve your pain. And when you're there, it brings you in the present moment and doesn't involve your pain. And then after, it gives you a memory that doesn't involve your pain. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is how I'm gonna do it. This is gonna pull me out of grief. And so I just did it time after time. I'm like, let's go to Champagne and toast myself in champagne with champagne. And even if it was I moved to New York City, have some soup, go to Chinatown and find your favorite soup dumpling is what I would do on an afternoon, or find your favorite recipe. It can be small, it can be large. And then food was literally how I pulled these food experiences. I pulled myself out of the hole of grief.
No, I love that you go there because you mentioned sensory and that you're speaking my language, first of all, especially as the havening techniques practitioner. It's all about psychosensory and altering our thoughts, moods, and behavior, and really
Yes.
finding the joy and the happiness that we control.
Yeah.
So taste and smell are the senses that you're using most, and sight too, I would think, because
Mhm.
presentation matters. But that in itself is just it's extraordinary what you've been able to do in your healing. And goodness, like 3 months in Europe. I mean, it's like eat, pray,
Oh.
love, but you took your spouse. That's a different book.
Don't worry, exactly. That's coming. Memoir's been out.
Yeah. But in that, I mean, that was another loss that you kind of dealt with as well that you had to work through because you and Troy didn't work out. There's a divorce on the table, and I get that. And that itself it can be a very traumatic loss, a relationship, especially when you've been through something so heavy like the loss of a child, something you shared together.
Yeah.
So having the experience together and being able to talk about it positively, even if you're not with the person anymore, there's a gratitude there, I would imagine, that you are sharing with this other person who is no longer in your life in the same manner, but there's a deep share there that you both express gratitude with.
100%. I mean, I'm forever grateful to Troy, and I'll love him forever. And we just realized that we weren't gonna be able to heal the way that we needed to heal. It's interesting. We went to couples counseling after we lost TJ, just because, like, actually, it was grief counseling, really, but we both went
Mm.
together and so it turned out to be both. And I remember the counselor was like, I'm so sorry to tell you this, but 93% of couples that lose a child don't make it. I'm like, well, we're gonna be. What are you talking about?
Thanks for setting us up for fail.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, whatever. We're going to be one of the whatever it is, 7%. I'm
Yeah.
worried. And he said, because the reason is because your biology, when
Mm.
you lose a child, that child, you see the child in the other person, you feel the child in the other person, and you see all of the memories of your child in that other person. And at first, after you lose the child, he said, you guys will be together like a magnet. Like imagine two magnets, like you're together, and because that you just need that child back so bad, and you so long for it, that your husband or wife is that for you. And it's this emotional, and he's like, and then once you start healing, it repels like two magnets away from each other because it's just so painful. And I was like, yeah, no, we're going to be fine. And he was kind of right, unfortunately. And, it was the most amicable, loving thing we could have possibly. It's almost like we had to love each other enough to let each other go so
Mm.
that we could heal all the way and live our. It's like, I still hate it, but it is the only and right way. So, yeah.
Uh, and it's beautiful that you're able to say that and share that because divorce is such an epidemic. You know, I've been through it, and at first you look at yourself like, "What's wrong with me?" And you tend to, and every situation's different. I mean, it also depends on if the partner or both partners were being honest and there's transparency. I mean, when those things are lacking and trust is lacking, the success rate is probably even worse, you know. But we tend to go within and we blame ourselves first. Like I failed at something and people are going to look at me differently. And what I've noticed just in divorce itself is that there's a new story people are telling and there's a new way of dealing with divorce because we're seeing it more common is that people the first thing they say that I got personally was, oh well, are you happy? And yeah, I'm happy. I'm so much happier. And and it's good, and I can only speak for me. Uh, but hearing that as a response rather than, "Oh, you guys will work it out," which I think was the response for so long, that's why we went into a relationship fail as the word fail. Now we're seeing it more as like, this is giving two people the opportunity to be happy,
Right. Right.
right?
I think length of relationship is the determination of success. It's how well did you love each other, and sometimes you have to love each other so well that you let each other go.
Yeah, definitely. It's like that quote, you let go if it comes back to you.
Yeah.
There's so many different things out there, but it depends on the two people involved. And
Hmm.
I think before I dealt with divorce, I was more quick to judge people who were going through it, or there were things that they were battling, like, oh well, clearly this happened or that happened. I mean, we go to that place, and it's when you go through it, much
Yeah.
like with loss of any kind or any situation, when we have more of a understanding of it and we grow through it, because it does take growth and awareness. You can't just divorce and da 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 move on. um, there has to be growth in there. That's when we're able to look inward out. And I think that's where the resonance comes from and the empathy towards others, because we have grown in our own sense from what we've been through, you know? So that's it's beautiful that you've had that ability to go there and dealing with more than one loss in a pretty short amount of time, by the way, a couple years or so. Even if it's 10 years, it's one decade of 3 or 4 that we've been on the planet, so yeah, that speaks volumes how you've been able to deal with that. But
Yeah.
so so thank you for sharing that and holding space to share that with the listeners. Here's something I want to touch on. So going back to Some School Insider, what is it you want to happen from Some School Insider? What is your hope?
Oh, that's a fun one. Okay, my hope was always, I guess, several different things. First, I wanted to develop mastery of flavor. That was my real reason for going to school. I wanted to really, really become a wine expert in the way of being able to identify flavors from wine and become more a master of flavors in general. That was the first goal of going to school. And then creating Som School Insider was I wanted to make wine fun and accessible for people. To basically go to the top, like sommelier training, but then bring it down and make it fun and accessible for everyone. So that was the goal of the series. Um, and then from a personal level, I wanted to use this series as a bridge from digital space, wineforfood.com, where I run all video content, to broadcast and streaming space. So I wanted it to be the bridge between, like I said, uh, web and broadcast. And it's turning out to be that, which is so exciting. It's so exciting.
Seriously, and it can be overwhelming, there's so many different platforms now. I mean, when I started out in television a gajillion years ago, first it was just TV. There wasn't even cable,
I know
and
how.
you had a few outlets that you could use. You could use radio or you can use television, and then cable surfaced, and then years later we have the internet, and now there's just so many different means. I learned so much from my college students that I teach because they have their finger on the pulse of everything. So as someone in our age range, we're kind of the in between, what we call in the communications field. There's the digital natives who have never known life without the digital age. They're pretty much born with the phone in their hand, and the internet is in front of them. They've never known life without a computer. And then there's the digital immigrants who are maybe like our parents.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're kind of in between. Like, I think the first time I touched a computer was in high school during keyboard class, and it was half keyboard, and then it was half C prompt, blah, 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 build the program, boring, right? I
Yeah.
didn't even own a computer in college.
I
So,
know. Yeah. I went to the
yeah, so now with our minds kind of coming into this digital age that we've been
Mhm.
a part of, how overwhelming has it been for you, or if has it been overwhelming to say, "Oh my gosh, I wanna hit all these different avenues because there's so much to hit."
Wow, that's a good point. I just sort of look at it as distribution, right? So if you make a really exciting product that people want to see, how do you reach them? And so
Mhm.
I think, okay, just the more the merrier, really. If so, we obviously are on wineforfood.com, but then we got an amazing deal with Binge Networks, which is so exciting. And through Binge, we have an app on Binge, so we now stream on Apple TV, Fire TV, Amazon Fire TV, Sony, Google Play. There's literally over 100 different outlets that through Binge Networks, they can see some School Insider and Wine for Food content. So basically, you go to, say, Fire TV or Apple TV and search for the app, Binge Networks, download it, and you can see all of our stuff. So it's really a cool situation because with one, deal, we were able to reach 100 different streaming platforms. And then we got a deal with Roku. It's coming very soon and will be on all Roku players too for Wine for Food channel. So, and that's a whole nother, there's like 33 million people or something that have a Roku device and it's included in that device. So I just look at it as, okay, this is my way to reach people that want to learn about wine and how can I find them and how can they find me?
Kaboom. I think that's where you're showing that you're keeping your focus, and we talked about this prior, and we've had conversations about this, where it's letting go of the reins a little bit and putting your attention where you want your attention to be, which is talking about good wine, having good conversations,
Yeah.
being the professional that you are and the expert in the field of wine that you are, which, by the way, I want to touch on that in a minute, and just delegating, like, hey, you know what? I know this is an area you probably have a little bit more experience in. So, boom, go. Right. And
Yeah.
just focus on what you want to do, which is the love of building your connection with
Yeah.
wine and food and people.
And people. That's right. And if you can, get an amazing publicist, which
Yeah.
I
Getting a good publicist. I was waiting for you to drop that one.
Matt Bowen,
Yes.
MDPR, I'm in love. He is the most amazing. Yeah, that always helps.
Shout out to Matt.
Shout
Good deal. So I have to ask you because I watching you on this journey the last, gosh, I don't even know how long it's been that you went to Psalm School. How long is the program?
It's 4 months, and I was there last spring.
Okay, I knew it was within the last year or so.
Yeah,
And there are people who have been Psalms for decades. And here you are, this like, freshman Psalm, basically, in a way, or
really.
well,
Yeah.
sophomoric
100%.
Psalm, because I like alliteration.
Oh,
Um,
right.
here you are, and with the knowledge and a younger, more youthful knowledge and more of what I would call the childish enthusiasm. That's what I love to call it
Oh my gosh,
because
yeah.
we're with wide eyes, big eyes, and wanting to learn everything. That's
Yeah.
that's how I am with what I've been teaching and learning.
Mhm.
But here you are, this young Psalm, and now you're blowing up as like an expert and someone who is a storyteller, you know?
Aw. Thank
So
you.
it's pretty incredible. But
Well, thanks
how
for it.
difficult was Psalm school?
You know, really hard.
I remember you studying for the test.
Oh my gosh, I can't even tell you how many hours I put into that thing. OMG. And it was a blast. One of my favorite things I've ever done in my life, and one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I would trace maps, like maps upon maps upon maps. You learn geography and geology and climate, and all of the different varietals, and then you're learning what all of the varietals are across the entire world, and then what wines they make, and then how to tell the difference taste wise. So you're teaching your palate and your mind at the same time to recognize varietals by flavor, taste, by structure. So like acid and tannin in your mouth, and then by region. And so then how does it plant itself in the world? So it's so cool for me. It was like another experience of joy, from like joy and mastery, to learn how grapes show themselves in different parts of the world and how different grapes taste from each other. And it was such a joy and such a blast and so incredibly hard. And you'll see if who knows if I became a song. You'll have to watch and see.
Oh, spoiler alert. By the
Or
way, how many other tests do we take where we get to drink?
oh, we get to drink every single class. Every
I
single
mean, that's the coolest class ever.
I know. Are you kidding me? Go to Sommelier Society of America. It's so fun. And I did an entry level SOM course. They have, they have many different SOM courses, and all
Mhm.
the way to Master SOM, which is might take 10 or 20 years. I mean, these people, there's only something like 250, is it 261 or something in the world, Master SOMs, and these guys dedicate their entire lives to the mastery of wine and understanding it. So like I am just scratching the surface. I can still consider myself a full student, but
Mhm.
it's so fun to have witnessed and learned from all of these SOM instructors that know it so well. And there's always more to learn. That's the most fun thing about
Yeah,
wine.
that's the thing, there's always more to learn. I mean, we could be experts in the field in something. I say that in my own learning, that I'm always going to be open to learning more so that I can be better at what I do. We never stop learning. It's when we say, "Oh, we're done," graduated, that we're kind of hindering ourselves. So that do you
100%.
do you have a passion to wanna go further in this?
Well, I mean, as far as learning about wine per se, no. But learning about food and wine together and how to create experiences, yes, for the rest of my life. So
Yeah.
I really did this to sort of understand food and wine pairings better and how to match wine with food. And from that standpoint, I want to learn about it for the rest of my life and learn about, like I said, wine and food together, but not necessarily the intricacies of being a som. It's more about how do I create a better experience for people to have a more enjoyable food and wine experience from a taste standpoint. And that'll
Yeah, I
be
love that. It's all about the experience. That's life in general. Life is an experience. So
yeah, yeah.
that actually kind of covers the what's next, I guess. What's next for Carol. And it seems like really seeing this show become something. I want to travel with you, girl. What are we talking about? Like, I'll carry your luggage.
Let's do
Don't
it,
you love
please.
when people say that? Like, whenever I go on stories, they're like, "Do you need a luggage person?" I'm like, I just join me on the journey. It's about conversations. It's about telling stories. It's about listening. Like, I can't emphasize that enough. It's being a good listener because that's where the good stories really come. You know.
Yes, yes, it totally is. And just, it's exactly funny that you said that. Can I come with you on a trip? My life, my life goal of my dream show of life would be to do what I did for myself, which was to make these mind blowing food adventures,
Mhm.
and do that for other people. So I use that as a way to have joy. Basically, it's like a joy movement. Create joy and passion in your life with food and wine. So I want to have a show where I create mind blowing food adventures for people to create joy and healing. So that would be my next show, dream show concept. And I'm working on a memoir as well.
Sign me up. I think in this time when we're dealing with so much time at home, and I've mentioned this before with a couple of the other conversations I've had, is that this is where the creative mind really has been thriving.
Yeah.
Working, and I was on a podcast. recently with my friend Jason D'Amico, and he asked me what's next. It's always like the hardest question to answer sometimes, but then it's the most authentic because you know the answer's right there. The working on the book, the working on the program, the building the workshop, whatever it is.
Yeah.
We're thriving during this time because we're holding space for ourselves to do that. We're not distracted.
Oh, that's the truth. I know.
Right?
Thing. I'm trying to meditate like 30 minutes a day, and I am, wow, finding so many cool things out about myself because we're slowing down so much.
Yeah,
It's
and you're taking a chance to sit back and listen. It's sometimes just, and we say this in normal conversation, when you listen, the answers come. And that means listening to yourself too, you
yeah,
know?
first and foremost yourself.
Awesome. I love it. Oh God, so many good things going on with you, girl. But I want to do a little rapid fire with you before we go.
Oh,
So I'm
fun.
going to throw out some words at you, and I want you to
Okay.
kind of share the first thing that comes to mind when I say these words.
Okay.
Okay? Because
Yeah.
we didn't touch on some of these topics, but
Okay.
for the listeners out there, we'll see what happens. Okay?
Okay. Why not? Let's go.
All right. Here we go. Wine,
Yum.
food,
Oh my gosh. My saving grace.
France.
Oh, hallelujah. These are too easy. The words are not really descriptive.
Oh,
France.
don't worry. I might throw some zingers in there.
Okay.
What's
Yeah.
France?
France is wine to me.
Italy.
Food.
Gymnastics.
Ooh. Mastery. Joy.
Oh, okay. Ladybug.
Oh, my heart.
Children.
TJ.
Travel.
Freedom.
Good one. Family.
Safety.
Yeah. Yeah, so those were good. So the one topic we didn't really touch on was the gymnastics, you
Yeah.
know? So I want to circle back to that for a second. I usually, I like ending with the rapid fire, but I thought, oh, wait, we didn't touch on that. I do want to ask you about this. You were a college gymnast, and
Thank you.
I'm curious real quick, and for our listeners, how much is the discipline as being a really good gymnast where did you go? Was it University of Michigan?
Michigan State. Yep.
Michigan State. You went to Michigan State and you were on the gymnastics team, and that's some like serious stuff.
Wow.
How
Captain.
how much do you think you took away from that experience in what you're going through as far as the discipline? What did you learn from being a college athlete like that?
Oof. Oh my gosh, I could have a whole entire other podcast on that one, but let's
Oh, we'll
think.
come back.
Yes,
Episode part 2.
that's true. Um, so yeah, I would say I was a gymnast my whole life, and so for 15 years, I gave about 25 hours a week to the gym, and the discipline required for that, because you go, it's kind of like show business. You go when you're hungry, you go when you're tired, you go when you're injured, you go when you're sad, you go when you're happy. It doesn't matter. You show up and you deliver. And those lessons really work all the time. I mean, same thing. You know, you go to SOM school, you put together your plan, you study every night, you taste every day. I mean, you got to commit. And I think that was the one thing. So discipline and commitment. The other thing with gymnastics, it's kind of unique, is that when you throw a skill, so say like, a double back flip, for instance, you have to commit from the beginning, or you could easily land on your neck and ruin your life. Literally, you could die or be in a wheelchair. Like, you can break your neck. So it's all on the line every time you do something hard in the gym. So you have to commit from the beginning. You just have to go for it, even when you're learning and you've never done it before. So I would say I learned how to commit. Just, I'm all in. When I do something, I am all in. And sometimes that's good. Sometimes that kicks me in the ass, but and comes back to bite me. But I do love that, and the discipline, it really allows you to become a master at something.
That might actually be the best way to wrap things up. I'm kind of glad I held on to that because I always I
No,
always love to know what's the takeaway that you want to give our listeners, and I think you just wrapped it up in 15 years of gymnastics.
perfect. I love it.
Discipline and commitment, everyone. Carole, I love you.
I
I
love
think
it.
you're incredible. Thank you. And having you here has been a joy. And thank you for sharing yourself, your gift, and your story on Holistically Speaking.
I'm more than honored. I love you so much, and thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And if you want to check out Carole, or anything about her, Psalm School Insider, or any project she's been working on, head over to wineforfood.com. That's with a 4. We're actually going to put that link in the podcast so you can check it out. And Psalm School Insider is available, as she said, on Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, through Binge Networks, and Roku globally. And if you're interested in her book that she wrote about her beautiful son TJ, The Gift of the Ladybug, it's available on Amazon. Thank you so much, and thank you for listening to Hilistically Speaking. Make sure to visit me online at hilaryrusso.com and follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Hilary Russo. The show is produced by Alan Seals with music by Lipbone Redding. And to keep listening, all you have to do is find me at HIListically Speaking on Apple Podcast and Spotify and everywhere else you tune in. Until next time, be safe, be well, and don't forget to laugh.